To go live.
Great. Brent, I believe you're first up.
Did you say for me, Johnell? Oh,
Okay. Not yet, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I think we're going to go through these initial slides here. If you can go to the next slide,
Okay.
please. I'll go ahead and just,
Yep.
I'll go through these real quickly. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for CAG's meeting. Today is November 10th, 4 o'clock. We have a packed meeting as always. So looking forward to the discussion. Just a couple of slides. A reminder that closed captions are available in English and in Spanish. English closed captions are available within Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link to view both English and Spanish captions in a separate browser. That's https://ibr.news space and then captions. Next slide, please. As a reminder of how to access the closed captions feature, at the bottom middle of your screen, you should see a menu of options. If you can't see the menu, hover your mouse over the bottom middle of the screen, then click on the CC icon and a separate window with captions will appear. Next slide. As a reminder, we do have ASL interpretation. In an effort to continue to center equity, there is an ASL interpreter in addition to closed captioning. To make sure the interpreter is always visible, please right-click their video and select the spotlight video. For those watching on YouTube, when we screen share, you will be able to see the slideshow, closed captioning, and the ASL interpreter. You will still be able to hear different people speaking, but may not see them. Next slide. And for our webinar participants, just a few reminders for tips. First of all, thank you for joining us today. Please join audio by either phone or computer, but not by both. This helps to reduce the feedback. We encourage panelists to turn on your video so that we can kind of create, as much as we can, a community within this virtual space. Please keep your audio on mute when not speaking. And if you should experience any technical difficulties, please contact program staff at 360-329-6744. Next slide, please. And public input instructions. There will be an opportunity to provide brief public input later in the meeting today, roughly around 5:45 p.m. Verbal public comment will be welcome in the Zoom webinar during the designated time with the option to turn on your web camera. Please use a link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR CAG meeting webpage. Commenters will not be allowed to share their screens and will be removed from the room once the public comment period concludes. To comment by phone, you may dial 1-669-900-6833 or 1-408-638-0968. Please do enter the meeting ID number, which is 993-5459-6043, and passcode is 674942. You'll want to dial *9 to raise your hand. After you are invited to speak, please dial *6 to unmute yourself. Next slide, please. To submit comment after the meeting, fill out the comment form on the program website or email your comments to info@interstatebridge.org with CAG Public Comment in the subject line. You may also call 360-859-0494 for Washingtonians, or 503-897-9218 for Oregonians, or you may dial 1-888-503-6735 and state CAG Public Comment in your message. Written comments need to explicitly say CAG Public Comment in the subject line or in the body of the message for them to be identified and distributed to CAG members. All written comments must be received prior to 48 hours in advance of each upcoming meeting in order to be distributed to advisory group members. Comments received after that point will be distributed to members in advance of their next meeting. Next slide, please. And just a reminder for all of us, some of our operating norms is for us to first put relationships first, for us to keep focused on our common goal. Our common goal is to build a bridge, to notice power dynamics in the room, create a space for multiple truths and norms, for us to be kind and brave. Let's also work to practice examining racially biased systems and processes as we lean into equity, and for us all to lean in and look for learning opportunity. Next slide. With that, Mr. Ed Washington, I'll turn it over to you to review our agenda for the day.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I'd like to first welcome everybody to this wonderful meeting today. It's been a while. I think the last time we met, it was summer. It feels like winter, although I guess we're a few days away from it. The meeting agenda today is you're going to be given a program update and overview of partner conditions on the modified LPA. Then we'll be looking at the modified LPA and program area improvements. We'll also be discussing and talking about community benefit agreements. And then after that, it'll be what's next, public comments, and wrap up. And Mr. Bell, just I will be here for most of the meeting. I have a conflict, so I'll be leaving a little bit later. And Jason will be closing for me because Lynn is not here today. She's had a family situation that came up a few days ago. And so that's all that I have to say, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you, sir. And we will certainly look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. And I think next up we have Greg for a program update.
We do, and Greg is running a little bit behind, but one of Greg's updates was going to talk about an upcoming event, and we have Salome from our equity team here to talk about an upcoming event for IBR just for a minute or two.
Hello, everyone. I am so sorry that I'm not able to be on camera at the moment, but I did want to tell everyone that we have an upcoming equity roundtable on December 1st from 6 o'clock to 7:30. This roundtable is going to be a discussion on people living with disabilities and their relationship to infrastructure and infrastructure projects. And the title of it is Accessibility Throughout Infrastructure. This is to highlight December 3rd, which is International Persons Living with a Disability Day. And so again, that information is happening December 1st, virtually on Zoom from 6 to 7:30. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Great, thank you, Salome. Seeing or hearing no questions. Oh, Martha, please. And just a reminder for folks, if you could please use your hand raise feature.
Raise the hand. Okay, sorry.
No problem.
Will we get a notice about this, like with a link and whatnot?
Yes, you will be receiving an email probably tomorrow or on Monday with an official invitation from Jason.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good.
Are there questions, comments? Grace, I saw your hand up. Was that intentional?
I'm just here. I'm not sure Katie, she's in the same meeting Greg's in. They're trying to get out. So I'm here.
Okay.
We move to the next
Great.
one.
I think
So
Greg is now here. Greg, Mr. Administrator,
am.
we'll turn it over to you for the program update.
All right, well, sorry everybody for the delay. So once again, good afternoon. And it's good to have the CAG back together. So I just want to give you a brief update on where the program is moving on certain things, and then answer any questions that you may have for me or the program. So one of the key things that has happened since the last time we met, we had applied for a bridge improvement program planning grant. And this is a precursor to the big bridge grant that we also put in for. So we received $1 million from the U.S. Department of Transportation from Federal Highway Administration to study ground conditions for the bridge on Hayden Island. So we are actually, we've received our first official grant for the program. And this is tremendously important. It sends a message that our federal partners believe this is worthy. And this $1 million is just the first of what we hope to be many investments at the federal level to help get this thing built. So we also, we have other grant applications that we will be submitting. We are going to seek to maximize as many federal opportunities for funding as we possibly can in this upcoming year. So that's why our timeline is tremendously important. Federal dollars generally, the big federal dollars are generally the last dollars in. So we want to make sure that they see the commitment from each of the states so we can start attracting the billions that are needed from the federal government to get this thing done. So the second thing is we had a bi-state legislative committee meeting. Yeah, time is flying. I think it was last week, or it might have been week before last. So we are we updated the bi-state legislative committee on the program activities. We received very few comments, which was surprising, but we think that a lot of folks were distracted with the election politics that were going on. So, but it was a very cordial meeting. They were very accepting of our timeline and the necessity to keep the program marching forward. So that was a very good meeting. Yeah, as a matter of fact, that was almost 2 weeks ago Friday. So I see Bill, you have a question.
Yeah, just a quick question. Greg, can you tell yet if that committee is going to change in makeup due to the elections?
We don't know. It's a great question. Different committee assignments come with the changing of terms and cycles. So we will see what that means for the program itself. So we, whoever comes to us as part of that committee, we will get them up to speed if they are new to the program. But we have not heard any indication yet of pending changes. We know that we have a retirement on the Oregon side. Senator Beyer will be dropping off of the bi-state, so we anticipate having someone new in his place in Oregon. But so far, that's the only confirmed change that we know of. So next up is we've been doing a series of roundtable events around equity, and so folks understand why equity in transportation is important. And so our next roundtable event will be December 1st of 2022, so about 3 weeks from now. And this will be around accessibility through infrastructure. So it'll be an interesting conversation to talk about what the history of infrastructure has done to accessibility, whether through ADA or prior to that, when folks who were disabled did not have the ability to access transportation facilities. So we're looking for that to be a very good and robust conversation. So next up in this question gets into to Bill, what you were looking at, but we are looking at this on a broader level. We know that the elections happened, and We know there are some changes that are imminent amongst our partners. So we are, once again, reaching out, making sure that our partners know that we need to have a consistent input from their group. So we will be having those conversations and making sure that we do have that consistent voice representing the 8 partners. So we're not going to outguess the politics of what's happening, as races are still uncertain. So we will be waiting to see how the program can help serve, whether they're existing members or new members to either the executive steering group, bi-state ledge, or any other group that we may have that will change based on elective politics. And finally, what has our team been working on? Our team has been scrambling very hard since we've gone into this environmental impact statement phase, the supplemental phase. So we are preparing technical reports and analysis for partner review, and you guys will see some of the high level outputs of these technical reports, so you can understand as well where we are on certain issues. So this is the team has, and I can't count how many technical reports and analyses have to be done to get to this draft supplemental next summer. But the team has been working tremendously hard to get these things done. So once again, this is on our critical path, meaning that if we lose a day now, we more than likely cannot make that day up. So we're trying to keep the team on task and on schedule to get these things done and report back out to the partners and to the advisory groups on what our findings are. So Ed, I see you have a hand up.
Yes, just sort of a afterthought question, Greg. With regards to the national elections, can you speak, or even if it's a need to speak, to anything that may impact the bridge as a result of the national situation?
Well, and once again, I don't want to speculate on how things are going to turn out, but there's some indications that there may be some reining in of spending because folks want to see inflation brought under control. But I did hear President Biden reinforce his commitment to the infrastructure improvement that he has put on the table for the nation. So that was good news. We definitely want to see those dollars getting out to the states and to the state DOTs, so we can fund a project such as this. So we'll see how divided government may work. But we know that once again, at least at the executive level, there is still a commitment to the infrastructure funds moving forward.
Thank you.
So once again, the team is working tremendously hard. We're working on an updated conceptual finance plan that is not yet ready for publication, but as soon as we do have the numbers, we will be coming back to this group and others to share with you where we are at. We are in a period of hyperinflation in the construction world. And so our team is looking very closely at what that may mean for a project that we haven't broken ground on yet that will last 8 to 10 years out into the future. So we're being very careful in how we analyze numbers and assign risk to issues such as that. But with that, I think that's all of the information I had to share. But if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to take them.
There are questions, comments for Greg? Please, again, if you can, use your raise hand feature, and then I'll call on you based upon that. Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Greg.
All right.
We will
Thanks,
now
everybody.
invite Katie Belliconi and Grace to join us.
Hi. Thanks,
to-
Johnell.
To give us an update and an overview of the partner conditions on the modified LPA. So Grace and Katie.
Great, thank you. I think I know a lot of you, but for those who don't know me, my name is Katie Belliconi, and I'm part of the public affairs team for the program. Part of that work has been to be involved in the partner conditions. We heard that there was interest from this group in understanding that process better. So I'm excited to talk with you about that a little bit tonight. You can go to the next slide. So the partner conditions, taking a step back for a minute, what they really are is they were a tool that was set up by the program to aid in our communication and kind of agreements with the different partner agencies that we have alongside us in this program. So that's the city, both of the cities, the two MPOs, RTC and Metro, the two transit agencies, two transit MPOs, who am I forgetting? Oh, and ports, of course. And so those are 8 jurisdictional program partners that we asked to endorse the modified LPA. When they did that back in July, it was with the understanding that fundamentally they all were able to agree to the big components that were called out in the modified LPA. But each of them had several different areas of concern or additional specificity that they wanted to officially put on the record for the program to be aware of as we continue to advance our program. So 7 out of the 8 partners chose to use that mechanism or tool when they made their modified LPA resolutions. So they endorsed the LPA through a resolution by their elected bodies. And then 7 out of 8 of them, the Port of Portland, did not include any conditions. They included an attachment that had their list of conditions. Now, it ranged from some of the jurisdictions providing a small handful of conditions to others providing a vast amount, a few dozen. But you can see here that in total, we received 175 conditions. And these are the general categories or topics that those conditions really could be identified or sorted into these groupings. On our website, we actually posted the actual resolutions and the conditions that we received. Now they're in memo format. So it's one PDF where you have to scroll through many pages to view all of the conditions, but they are accessible up on our website. Some of you may have even viewed them because they've been up there since July when we received them. As you can see, here are the different topics that they address. Almost all of them, if not all of them, fall into one of these categories. Next slide. So when we talk about what the content of those conditions really amounts to, probably about 2/3 of those, I would say, conditions spoke to elements of the program that we were already accounting for or planning for, or we were able to somewhat easily accommodate in the advancement of our program planning efforts. About 1/3 of those are more challenging in nature. Some of them, quite frankly, are even contradictory to each other. by their actual requests. And so part of that from January until now has been meeting with these different program partners, better understanding what the need and intent of their requests entail, so that we're able to create a plan that meets their needs, as well as doesn't hamper other priorities of partner agencies or the own program's purpose and need, vision and values. So it's been a big process. It's taken a lot of time, a lot of conversations, and you see that about a third of those conditions, or the tougher ones, I listed some of the categories here that those deal with, these tough issues about really the number of aux lanes that's appropriate for this project. Some certain elements of transit and how we are going to bring light rail into Vancouver and what that looks like. Climate issues here and climate priorities, and how is the program addressing climate? How are they measuring climate? And you see here active transportation. How far should the program really be improving different active transportation elements beyond just what's obvious within the program area? So that gives you a flavor for the topics that are a little bit more difficult for the program to navigate. And again, it's a natural process for a program of this size. But it is a big effort, and it's a continued conversation between the partners collectively with the program. Now, what's going to happen from a process standpoint is that the program will respond to these jurisdictions with a formal letter, just as they sent us a formal letter letting them know how we are able to address the majority of their conditions, if not all of them. And then these other ones that do need some additional work, we may say that the program has outlined and developed a work plan to address these concerns and give them some information about how we plan to address their condition in the near future and what that timeline looks like. With that, I'll open it up for questions. My colleague, Grace Kruniken, is here as well, who's an expert on this. So please ask anything that might interest you about this topic.
Questions, comments from folks? See Dina and then Tom.
So for the conditions where you said that they are sort of like diametrically opposed to each other, what is the process for, trying to figure out who wins and who loses? Or is it more of a conversation about compromise, or is it possible to compromise on some things? I'm just kind of curious sort of what the process is going to look like, and is that going to be transparent in public, or is that going to be done just with the specific entities that had the concerns?
It's a great question. I'll give my initial response, then Grace can add anything else. Aux lanes is a great example of that, where some entity may have made it known that they want to ensure that there's adequate capacity through 2 aux lanes, and then others really prefer 1 aux lane. And so how do you resolve that? That's a big question, but it's a lot of conversation around these topics that don't automatically kind of marry to each other, to better understand what's the need behind the request, I would say, first and foremost, instead of them partner just jumping to the solution, trying to better understand the needs from both parties. And then, yes, outlining a process through an agreed upon process by all parties, that if we conduct this additional analysis or this study, then could we agree with the results of that? And I think that, we're pretty committed to this is an open and transparent project. And so I think when those things are decided, the responses and the conditions, for example, will be public we also intend to make those public. And so you all will have an idea, or anyone who's interested in how we are marching through those contradictory or those tough issues together. And I think part of that will be including the public and certainly the CAG in their perspectives on these tougher issues. But yeah, it's a negotiation. It's a ongoing conversation about how do we as a program achieve the desired result more than dictating the specific outcome.
I would just add, we have a work program for each of these items to get the technical information out on the table, then the jurisdictions that are involved, and then it'll be the explanation if it's possible to even do what's been requested of us, that would be made public so that people know what's there. There's some requests that have been made that we're just not sure if we can actually do what's being asked of us, and we'll write back to them and say, hey, we're working on that. We'll work with you as a jurisdiction. So there's a work plan for all those items that are kind of in contradiction with each other.
But actually, it's kind of the same question, but more specifically, do you risk losing the support of any of these partner groups over these conflicting requirements?
We might. I'll give you another example. TriMet said there's going to be light rail over to the waterfront and on to Evergreen, and that was included in the locally preferred alternative. C-Tran wrote back and said, and it needs to be embedded track so that buses can run over the thing as well. The program has to look at the practicality of having embedded track and the cost to the program of having embedded track, spell it out, and it has to meet TriMet's operational needs as well. So it could be that it works just fine, and it could be that it's a problem either for the transit agencies or for the program as a whole, the cost of the program. And if the program were to say no to either one of them, or were to say we're going with embedded track and TriMet would say we're out of here, that could cause a problem. Or if C-Tran were to say, hey, if you can't do embedded track, we're out of here. It's a possibility, but we have to work through the specifics of those things. These are things that weren't really anticipated. They came up through the process, and we'll work back with the properties to let them know what the circumstances are. So
I'd also say that this is a very typical for a project of this size. During the Columbia River crossing, we had the same type of process. So although it might seem alarming, and not to minimize it in any way, but it's really a tool for the agencies to document concerns or to kind of put what their preferences would be down on paper. There's a million different decisions that have to be agreed upon or negotiated between these jurisdictions all along the way. So this is just highlighting and formalizing some of the big ones at this point of the process.
Other questions from CAG? Great, seeing no other questions. Thanks to you both. Just for everyone's edification, both Grace and Katie will come before you on a regular basis to report out how these discussions are happening with occurring with some of our partners.
Happy to.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
Next up, we are going to invite Brad Phillips and Casey Lyles to discuss about the modified LPA and program area improvements. We'll turn over to Brad and Casey.
Great, thank you. For those of you who don't know me, hopefully you can hear me. Anybody, any nods? Great. My name is Casey Lyles. I'm the design manager for the IBR program. Brad and I are tonight going to go walk through the program area with some graphics to describe the program area improvements that will be studied in the supplemental EIS. I'll start and end with the context of this work and within our environmental analysis and walk through the next steps as well. So as you know, in July, the program agency partners unanimously endorsed the modified LPA. locally preferred alternative. That included the foundational elements of design for the IBR program. The modified LPA demonstrates regional support and allows the program to continue to do the work necessary to study the impacts and benefits of the program's improvements, and then further refine and design elements over the next couple of years. The foundational elements of the modified LPA are listed here. They include one auxiliary lane in each direction between Marine Drive and Mill Plain. The modified LPA includes an extension of light rail transit from Expo Center to Vancouver with a terminus at Evergreen Boulevard. The modified LPA includes variable rate tolling, and it includes a partial interchange at Hayden Island, including the full interchange at Marine Drive. I say partial interchange, I just wanted to describe that's a smaller footprint on over Hayden Island, and again, the full interchange at Marine Drive. And those will be described in a little more detail as we go through the next 10 slides or so. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll also see there that says 4 stations within the program area. The 4 stations include 2 new light rail stations, up to 2 new light rail stations in Washington, 1 new light rail station on Hayden Island, and also the reconstruction of the light rail station at the Expo station. And next slide, please. So the next phase of our program is the NEPA process, starting with the supplemental draft environmental impact statement. The improvements that we're describing for you tonight are what will be studied in the process for what impacts and benefits will result from the construction of those improvements. The impacts will be reported in the supplemental draft environmental impact statement in the summer of 2023. They'll be published and posted on our IBO program website, and we'll have a public comment period. There will be multiple forms to submit comments, including forms such as online comment forms, emails and letters to the program, and comment forms and oral testimony at public hearing. Comments will have to be submitted in written or oral testimony, written form or oral testimony in order to be included in the public comment record. And comments that provide specific detail at that time will enable the program team to better understand your preference or concerns. And the supplemental final environmental impact statement and the amended ROD are expected to be are planned for the summer of 2024. The next slide, please. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Brad, and he's going to walk through the improvements within the 5-mile stretch of the program. And that includes the dots on the screen that are 7 closely spaced interchanges and the areas in between those. So Brad, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Casey. Yes, as Casey was starting to describe, I'll walk you through the corridor from the south to the north, recognizing that what you're going to be seeing is a conceptual design, which means we're still very early in the design process. It is important to understand that what you're going to see is for evaluation of impacts in the EIS. These are certainly not ready for construction or anything close to that. We do have the opportunity to hear from the public through the EIS process, understand what the EIS is telling us from an impacts perspective, so that as we gather that additional information, modifications to these designs are very likely to occur based on all those additional things we learned through this process. So you'll be seeing details showing the modified LPA components that Casey was just mentioning. That's including the local street connections, transit, potential locations for park and rides, station locations, and the active transportation pathways. Next slide. Jason, you want to give me control?
Yep, just 1 second here.
Trying to get my cursor so you guys can, so I can help point to where I'm talking about.
was easier to find when there was only two people on. There we go. There you are. All right. Go ahead,
Thanks.
Brad. See if you can take it away.
So this is again, starting from the south end of the program.
And
This
real
graphic-
quickly, we have a question
Oh.
from Julie.
Go ahead, Julie.
Julie?
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I was just wondering, could you just briefly touch on how you determined the project area around the river, especially if we're going into an EIS?
The improvements, we've been in a lot of discussions, even dating back to the previous program, but extensively over the last year, 2 years, working with the public agencies. What are some of the desired elements that need improvement? From all of those perspectives, we were talking about transit, highway, shared use path. And so it's been that work with our agency partners, getting us to this point that would show what the desired improvements are. And that, that limits of those improvements is kind of what dictates the project area.
I will just add that we have the 6 purpose need statement from our EIS. So this really builds on the past NEPA documents that were prepared. And so that's our supplemental EIS builds upon that to still address those 6 purpose and need. The modified LPA really focused on some of the key foundational elements and changes within the program areas identified since 2013 with our program partners and the public. And so that's the formulation, and Brad and I are walking through what more of the program improvements look like within that 5-mile corridor that are in addition to the key program elements, but still contribute to addressing the purpose and need for the program area.
Great. Please keep going.
Okay, so this graphic is showing the vicinity of North Portland, Marine Drive in the middle top of your screen, Interstate Avenue interchange on the bottom of the screen. And so this is showing that Marine Drive is going to have some improvements on it, really focusing on the operational improvements of Marine Drive to improve freight accessibility through the corridor. This configuration is showing the single point interchange.
We have a question from Tom.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just trying to queue up for the next chance. It would be a lot more helpful on this graphic if some of these other local roads were indicated, the intersection or the interchange at Victory Boulevard being sort of cut apart so that we can't actually see how it relates to the interchange at Marine Drive. Makes it a little harder to envision what exactly you have in mind. The auxiliary roads around Union Court and Vancouver Way, it would be helpful to see how those are all interconnected to kind of understand the totality of the proposal. So I'm just suggesting that a future draft of this would benefit by having some, a little more comprehensive indication of what those local roads were. That's all.
Totally understand. One thing these graphics are trying to show is just the new improvements. So there are some very light colored lines under here where you can see the existing roads. My cursor right now is on Vancouver Way, the eastern extension of Marine Drive. So if one looks at these very closely, you can see some of those. Certainly maybe easier if you can zoom in and out to see some of that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the interpretation is if there's an existing road there, and it doesn't have something dark over it, it's the same configuration as it's there now.
I get it.
It's
just intuitively, it would be a lot easier if those were a little more clear so that we could see how the elements relate to one another.
Okay. I will actually, before I go too much further, note the legend. This should be fairly similar legends for all of these further slides. So orange is transit, the light rail portion of the transit. The dark orange is the transit stations. And in other slides, you'll see park and ride options. The green is active transportation. The dark is the roadway improvements. That would be on ground versus the gray would be elevated roadway. So something that is on a structure. And then there's stormwater improvements shown in blue. So those are going to be common legend elements throughout. So again, the black is showing the new roadway improvements. So I was talking about Marine Drive and Single Point interchange, all four directions from between I-5 and Marine Drive. From a local street perspective, there's a connection of the Expo Road that currently ends at the Expo Center. That would be extended underneath I-5 as it wraps around past Expo Center underneath I-5 and connects to the Vancouver Way and Marine Drive on the east side. The importance of that road, one of the importances of that road is it also provides the connections that would be the access to Hayden Island. So there's secondary access underneath Marine Drive that gets to this new road. And from that new road, then it connects over to the arterial bridge on the east side of I-5 that connects over to Hayden Island. That arterial bridge is also where the shared use path will connect across the entire river and connect to Hayden Island in Vancouver. It's shown across that arterial bridge connecting into the active transportation network of North Portland, which would include making sure that the 40-mile loop connects underneath I-5 and looking at the different connections into North Portland, including road improvements and active transportation improvements along Expo Road, as well as extensions in the project area along MLK. There are some improvements on MLK shown to rebuild the ramps, both eastbound and westbound, to improve the accessibility from the Bridgeton area and onto MLK. The transit system is the extension of the yellow line that is there today. This is the Expo station. That does not change. There will be modifications to the station, but the station would be in the same location. And that crosses underneath Marine Drive, crosses at grade over the new arterial, and then extends north over North Portland Harbor. Another element is an optional element that we're studying is a light rail vehicle overnight facility in the vicinity of Expo Center. And one of the reasons for studying something like that is to be able to improve our transit operations, especially early morning and late night, to reduce the deadheading of trains, being able to access the very, very start of their runs or ending of the runs, the morning and evening. So this is an optional element that we'll be studying. Another element that's added is a braided ramp. So what do we mean by braided ramp? It's between both Marine Drive and this new interchange ramp. Currently, Marine Drive ties directly into southbound Main Line, and then is a very, very short section before Interstate Avenue. exits. In this proposal, the ramps connect together and stay on a separated roadway, crosses over the interstate off ramp and connects into main line south of Interstate Boulevard. The operation of that is very similar to the existing function northbound, where that is in that's a system that's in the existing system now northbound because of the closely spaced interchange. And so we would duplicate that in the southbound direction. Janet, you have your hand up.
Could you use your cursor to explain that to me so I can follow that a little bit better, please? I'm curious to know how trucks are going to be able to access that.
Brad, you may need to accept my invitation. It says I'm waiting for you to control the screen, so.
There is nothing on my end that would suggest that.
Okay. Because we can't see your cursor yet.
Okay, try giving me access again and see what happens.
Okay, just hit the button.
No cursor yet.
Yeah, we see. I see it
Now
now.
we can.
There it is.
Now we
There it
can.
is.
Okay. Previously, I was moving that cursor all over the place, and I was certain you guys were following me.
Apologies.
Okay.
I was trying to, but you lost me.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's why we tried to get this cursor going. Okay, so you can follow it now. My cursor's right over Marine Drive.
Just go slow
Yep.
with it, Brad, because it's a little laggy.
Okay. So if a truck or a car, anybody was on Marine Drive and they were going southbound, they would get on the ramp as you're going south. This gray roadway that my cursor is over is not connecting to I-5 at this point. These two ramps, if you were coming from the new road down underneath I-5, it would come underneath Marine Drive. And those two ramps from Marine Drive and let's call it Expo Road would connect together, still stay separated on a structure that is elevated over the top of the existing southbound off-ramp to Interstate and Victory. And at that point, then it would connect into southbound I-5.
Wait.
So one of the operational changes that results in is you cannot get from Marine Drive onto I-5 and then exit again at Interstate. So if one were to make that type of movement, you'd want to use this new road extension and use Expo Road to continue on to Interstate.
Where is your cursor? What new road extension?
Yeah, I don't see it.
Okay, so my cursor right now is on Expo Road. Can you see that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, there you are. Uh-huh.
And right now, Expo Road essentially terminates into Expo Center parking lot. We would extend the road past the Expo station, transit station. It would go underneath Marine Drive, go underneath I-5, and connect into this system of both the Vancouver Way and Marine Drive, Union Court intersection, as well as connect over to the East Arterial Bridge to go over to Hayden Island.
Okay, I think I'm a little confused, but okay, thank you.
I see Martha has her hand up as well.
Yeah, I just want to, are these black dots that are on the these are roadway improvements. There are 3 black circles. Are those roundabouts?
Right now, we are showing 3 roundabout intersections. These are each at the new ramp connections that go northbound and southbound to that new road, and then another one at this intersection with the arterial bridge. We have heard many comments about questioning whether roundabouts are the right way to have these intersections. We understand that. That's something that can be a further study. These are the biggest footprint. It's a bit better through the NEPA analysis to think through footprints that may be a little bit bigger. And we will be doing further intersection analysis to understand if those might want to be signals or some other type of intersection control. But for right now, we are showing them as roundabouts.
I just want to add part of that again is to reiterate that those two ramps are part of that partial interchange to Hayden Island. So again, those are the ramps that come to and from the south in the Portland area off of I-5 and back onto I-5. Those connect over, like Brad mentioned, to that arterial bridge that then connects over to Hayden Island.
So I'll do a quick follow my cursor again. If you were going northbound, I'm just down at the bottom of the page, I would exit where you currently exit to get to Marine Drive. Continuing traveling north next to Delta Park. And then that ramp would split. And one direction would go towards the left underneath Marine Drive and get to that first roundabout on the new road. And then loop around over the arterial bridge to get to Hayden Island. And similar opposite direction, come underneath I-5 to that new ramp going southbound. So these are the ramps and with inclusion of the arterial bridge of the access to Hayden Island from Portland.
We better move on.
Yes, next slide. So we were just talking about the arterial bridge. I'll start there. That's where my cursor is now, as the arterial bridge would connect to Tomahawk Island Drive. Tomahawk Island Drive currently does not cross under I-5. It terminates both on the east and the west, and we would make that connection underneath I-5. So that connection to Tomahawk would be the access to and from North Portland. Because of, well, let's see, I'll go southbound. How do you get from Washington to Hayden Island? Coming along Main Line, exiting and a ramp that continues straight down to Jansen Beach Drive. And again, not opposite direction, just on the other side, the east side of I-5, the northbound ramp. And so this is quite a bit different ramp configuration that is there today. So these arterial streets would all be modified to make those different connections, provide improved active transportation on each of those streets, and really trying to improve that connectivity for east and west across the island through 3 streets crossing across I-5. Going back to Main Line, the Main Line is constructed to the west of the existing bridge, and that is very important for constructability reasons. So we can build the new bridge while the existing one is still in operation. The Main Line includes the 3 through lanes plus 1 auxiliary lane in each direction. It includes shoulders, and specifically shoulders that are capable of bus on shoulder operations, so that primarily the express buses can utilize those shoulders to improve their travel times. It has the active transportation under the northbound direction, and it has the light rail under the southbound direction. So it's hard to see those under the bridge, but light rail as he pops out over Hayden Island in this orange color and has a station somewhere in the vicinity between Hayden Island and Tomahawk Island Drive. These stations, as we start showing them, are representative locations. They're very close to where we think we want them, but we will be working with the public and the agencies to better understand the specific location of these stations. And then the light rail guideway continues across North Barland Harbor and connects in towards Expo Road. Are there any questions on Hayden Island? Tom?
Well, I note that you are not using the roundabout solution at the foot of the ramps coming from Washington to Jansen Drive or whatever that is. Is that going to be just a T intersection with a light, or how do you plan to do traffic management at those where the ramps join the local streets?
Yeah, that's our starting point of what we'd analyze exactly is a T with signals. Okay, Ms. Note.
Yep. Keep
no
going.
Other questions? Next slide.
Probably about another 8 minutes left here.
Okay. The next slide is going to show us downtown Vancouver. This is one area where we do have two variations of the roadway alignment. And we're doing this to make sure we're analyzing a range of alignment options so we can better understand the range of impacts in this very constrained area of downtown Vancouver. I'll be able to show you where the LRT is. Try to get through this real quick. We do have some potential transit park and ride locations, and you'll see that we're showing multiple locations. These are all options. We would be doing our analysis to choose one, maybe not even choose one at all. We're doing quite a bit of work to understand what is the best location and what is the appropriate size of each of the park and ride locations. So just noting that you'll see several, but we're choosing from that list, not all of them. Go ahead and switch to the next slide. So the two options, one on the left, one on the right. The one on the left, you'll see, I'll start with transit, again, coming under this, out from underneath the southbound direction, providing a light rail station as closest to the waterfront area as we can get. Right now it's showing over the top of the BNSF. This is an elevated station. And they're providing connections down to the waterfront. It'll extend in an elevated fashion over the top of all of the highway infrastructure and continue up to Evergreen, where there would be another station. In this case, it would be at the same elevation as Evergreen Boulevard. So it would act like an at-grade station at Evergreen. Technically, it's still on structure because it's a level above I-5. In this option, the SR14 configuration and ramps are serving the same functions as there today. They are connecting to different locations. I think we've talked about a lot of the improvements underneath this, the local connections in downtown Vancouver, extension to Main Street, ramps connecting to Columbia Street. So I don't want to get into a lot of the details of that. What we call the C Street extension ramps, that's the access between I-5 to downtown Vancouver. Let's see, before I go on, I just mentioned the shared use path is under the northbound bridge. We're showing the helical ramp connecting down to Vancouver or Columbia Street. Again, this active transportation connection, this ramping system is something that we are continuing to study. But for the NEPA analysis, we're showing it in this configuration.
One other thing, Brad, is it doesn't say that the existing bridge will be removed, but that's also part of that. The existing I-5 bridge over the Columbia.
Yes. Okay, so I mentioned the C Street ramps. In this configuration, there's a loop ramp here that is northbound connection to C Street. There's a direct connection from C Street to the southbound direction. If we look at this option on the right, those two ramps are not shown. That loop ramp is not there. That connections to C Street is not there for northbound. In this configuration, in this option, vehicles would access downtown to and from Mill Plain off the screen to the north. This option is also shifted to the west. So we want to understand how a shifted option might impact, have different impacts to right away on the east side versus the west side. So there's a footprint difference in this one, and there's the functionality difference of C Street. Otherwise, the SR14 ramps to and from SR14 to downtown and SR14 to I-5 are the same in both of these options. Are there any questions on SR14?
I see Sam. And real quickly, and then we'll go to Dina. Real quickly, Brad, about how many more slides do you have? I don't want to rush through this.
There's just two more.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Okay, well let's make sure you get through the rest of your material because it's so critical. So Sam, and then I think Dina.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, thought you had your hand up. We'll go to Dina and then Martha.
So I apologize. I'm looking at this on a very small Microsoft Surface, and the two images look virtually the same to me, with the exception of the loop being on the two loops being on the left-hand side and one loop being on the other. You mentioned that the one on the right is it's actually shifted. Is it going to be more obvious in future images that it's moved over farther? Because it looks exactly the same to me.
Yeah, this type of scale, it is hard to see. Yes.
By how much is it? How much does it move over? I guess if it's only like a foot, then that, I wouldn't expect you to redo the map. But if it's significant, then I would want to have a more accurate visual, I guess.
It's shifted somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 feet.
Yeah.
So it's it's significant enough to that through our analysis, we'll be able to understand different impacts.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe the last comment. Oh, Martha, go ahead. Sorry.
Nope.
Yeah, I was wondering, now you can go southbound on Washington Street, and you can choose to get on either 14 or 5 southbound. And that looks like that is not happening in either one of these options. Is that the case?
Yes, the connections to the local streets in Vancouver change. So I can run through that real quick.
Really fast though, because I don't want to hold you up. But.
Yeah, both directions to SR14 connect to Columbia Street. So this intersection where I'm at,
Brad, try clicking your mouse because we can't see your cursor. So try, if you click, maybe that'll help pop it up.
I clicked. It's not doing. Now it did something.
There we go. Now we can see your cursor. There we go.
Okay. I can't remember the name of this street. Just north of the Burlington Northern Railroad is an intersection that's there currently. That's the proposal of where SR14 ramps connect onto Columbia Street. there's a connection to the extension of Main Street, and the eastbound SR14 would also be able to connect to that new Main Street connection. So it would provide, and actually westbound would connect to Washington. So we're trying to disperse the traffic a little bit in both directions, have two different access points from Vancouver onto SR14. And then, as you mentioned, the C Street, let's see, I'm going to go over to the left side now. Sorry to confuse you. If you were going to and from I-5, you'd connect at C Street, right at 6th Avenue. That's currently where SR14 connects, correct? Is at 6th and C. So that would revert to being the access point to and from I-5.
Okay. Got everything except for maybe did you mention the community connector at the north end there, Brad?
No, that's one thing I was going to go back to. So the community connector is a proposal to study a lid that is essentially extending the structure that is Evergreen Boulevard to the south. That lid would provide improved connectivity between downtown Vancouver and Fort Vancouver. It would also provide that connectivity to the light rail station.
All right, maybe about 3 more minutes and then we need to move on here.
Schedule driver, Johnell. Go ahead to the next slide.
Well, I mean, the awkward silences doesn't help, Brad. So keep moving.
Continuing north, this is showing Mill Plain and Fourth Plain interchanges. The primary changes that are occurring here are the interchange connections because of the closely spaced intersections. Southbound is an aux lane, northbound is a braided ramp. There are added lanes because of SR14 coming on. So those are all the interchange type of improvements, trying to improve that flow between the closely spaced intersections.
And I see Whitney has her hand up real quickly as well. Whitney. Whitney.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So with the 30-foot move to the west, what kind of impacts will we see at the Fort of Vancouver? And there is a little park down on the riverbank on the north side where the Cowlitz tribe and many other tribes probably host a canoe landing and come to the shore. And so I'm wondering what impacts there will be to that park and to the riverbank down there.
Can you flip to the previous slide? Did I do that?
So I'll start, Brad, with just first, again, we're looking at what improvements in the program area, not impacts today or describing those. Those will be come with the description of the draft environmental impact statement in the summer of 2023. I have a slide that I'll briefly talk on that. So as far as the improvements go, Brad, you can describe, and I think the park you're talking about, Whitney, is east of the improvements there, just on the waterfront.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, currently the program is not showing impacts to that park area and that canoe landing area. We have heard desires of improving waterfront access, but those that type of thing we haven't developed yet. So that type of thing is still a possibility, but it's not impacted directly by the infrastructure modifications. Both of these at the water's edge are identical. The changes really result north of the SR14 interchange, really primarily between Evergreen and SR14.
And as far as your question about the alignment shift, again, it's giving us a range through the DEIS of analyzing what impacts through that tight area of Vancouver. Again, not describing what the impacts are now. We have that time to go through what all those are. It's not just footprint, it's all of the 26 different disciplines within the NEPA process that we have to analyze to walk through that. So it does provide, again, that kind of range of what are the potential impacts within that ability to shift, whether it's east or west. So it does have the potential benefits or impacts, I guess, to either side of the freeway.
Next slide. Okay, so back to Mill Plain. We'll have operational modifications at both Mill Plain and Mill Plain and Fourth Plain. Each of those improvements, streets will include enhanced active transportation on them. Again, really looking at trying to improve those connections east and west of the I-5 corridor. Next slide. This is showing up all the way up to the north end of the project at SR 500. Very similar to the last slide. Operational improvements for interchange to interchange connections. For example, southbound, the exit will move to the same exit as 39th Street, and then have the option to continue south underneath that underneath.
Yeah, there's a braided ramp there. Yep.
Yeah, the braided ramp, so that you can get directly to Fourth Plain without that weave that occurs right now between SR 500 and Fourth Plain. So braided ramp that would, for example, if you're from SR 500 today, you could get on I-5 and exit at Fourth Plain. In the future, you couldn't because of this braided ramp, and you would have to take an alternative route. The other changes, because of the modifications we're doing on Main Line, we're replacing the 29th and 33rd overcrossings, and those would also have improved active transportation across those two bridges. Whew. There you go, Johnell. I'm done unless there's some other questions.
Well, there's just 2 slides, and I'll quickly just mention these, Johnell, take 30 seconds. So again, these are the conceptual designs. They are not final design. I want to reiterate that. These are the improvements being shown, and the next 7 months we'll spend working on what that quantitative and qualitative analysis of the benefits and impacts will be, and publish that in the SDEIS for then comments. And next slide, please. And the last one, between the DEIS and the FEIS, then going into the FEIS that addresses those comments, it refines the modified LPA, seeking to look at what all that input does to any changes, updates, corrects, augments the areas, and in that time frame too, if we couldn't avoid significant impacts, then we look at what specific mitigation there is for those impacts. And with the record of decision in 2024, that's issued by our federal lead agencies, who are FTA and FHWA, and then allows us to move with that final alternative into permitting and final design, again, expected in summer of 24. And that's what we have for share with you tonight on the improvements.
Thanks to you both. Very good discussion, and just for all of CAG members, we'll have ongoing opportunity to hear from both Brad and Casey as we continue the design discussion. Okay, next up we have Program Equity Lead Jake Ward to talk about the Community Benefits Agreement development process. So Jake.
Thanks, Johnell. Hi, everybody. I've been in front of this group a few times, so hopefully most of you are familiar with me. So I'll be quick because I know we're behind on time. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about, which I think a lot of you have heard of, the process we're going through to develop a community benefits agreement, or CBA. And first by explaining kind of what that is. And so these are pretty common across big projects in the US, and essentially what they are is they're an agreement between the community and a developer or developing entity that establishes certain benefits that are going to be part of that project, that are going to be funded through that project, usually in addition to what the core of the project is. They're really becoming a best practice for projects like this, and they take different forms. Between some are privately developed between, say, a private developer and a community group of community organizations or coalition. But what we're talking about here is, since we are a public entity, we're taking the lead on convening folks and developing this agreement. Next slide, please. So what they typically include, and this is not to say that the IBR Community Benefits Agreement will include all of these things or that we're limited to these things, but components such as local street improvements, living wage programs for the workers on a project, targeted hiring by zip code or demographic, job training, construction mitigations, affordable housing development, and local improvements and amenities and enhancements that might be in a project area. I see Tom has his hand up.
Thank you, Jake.
You there, Tom?
Can you hear me?
Okay, there you are.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Sandovar, and I'm a capital projects manager for Clark College. I'm glad that we're talking about today community benefits agreement, and just want to put this out that Clark College is doing an excellent job in understanding what the industry requirement is, and around the clock we are working to develop our advanced manufacturing program, our welding program, and anything that relates to construction and trade. So just putting it out there, the construction period begins for this project. I want the IBR community to be very diligent about how they can benefit this project by utilizing, the future ones, which is our, trade students, and how this project can benefit vice versa. So just putting it out there and be diligent about the students that Clark College is producing through the advanced manufacturing and building program. And, there is an extreme shortage of trade workers in our construction industry. So I think that's the best way how we can utilize a local talent for this $1 billion project.
That's great. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, we're going to need folks at the table who are connected to those programs and are familiar with them to help us put this together. So really appreciate that.
And more than happy to have Clark College folks on the table and just kind of tailor a program in the coming future how Clark College could help this project, and especially the younger generation, be the voice and take pride and ownership for this project.
Great, thank you. Robin?
Yes, what's different between this community benefit agreement than one that may have existed in the former CRC project?
So largely what was, as far as my understanding, I wasn't on the CRC project, but there was a list of sort of mitigations that were going to be enacted as part of that. This is beyond just kind of mitigating for potentially negative impacts. This is really a way to invest and ensure that the besides just the construction of the highway improvements, the transit, the active transportation, what else can we leverage this investment for in terms of enhancing the local community? So it's beyond what was developed for that, but if there's someone else on the call who's a little more familiar with what was done with CRC, I'd welcome your help.
I guess my point is this is a much more substantial approach than what existed under the CRC.
That's the idea for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, let's go to the next slide. So we have an equity framework that you have seen and is on the website if you need a refresher. But we are going to make sure that this CBA really ties back to that framework. Some key points from the framework that are relevant. We talk about acknowledging, honoring, and applying lessons learned from the history of the area. We talk about identifying and addressing disparities. So how can this agreement really move that needle forward and maybe reduce some of those disparities? Using existing laws and regulations as the floor rather than the ceiling. We are certainly under an environment where, due to sources of funding and such, there's going to be regulations that require us to have some equitable approaches to engage communities and such, but we don't want those to be limiting at all. And then contract equity and economic justice are certainly principles that will play into this pretty significantly as we look to help boost the workforce and get folks into the trades that are there and are essentially have that opportunity coming up with this huge investment. Next slide. Again, back to the equity framework, we have our core 6 objectives under that, and we've started to organize the types of things that we are going to look into for a CBA and under each of these areas. And there's even that specific objective of community benefits that is meant to support this effort. Next slide. All right, so a few considerations. We will need to be adherent to requirements under, say, FHWA and FTA, since they will be funding a big portion of this project, and so we will need their approval of any CBA as part of this. There are certainly a lot of related activities and plans underway with our partner agencies, and so we'll need to partner with them, make sure we're aware of those, and they might be a key players in implementing some of the benefits that are agreed to. Like I said, there are some regulatory considerations, what we can and can't do given funding sources. And then the kind of a separate track is the development of a potential project labor agreement or workforce agreement that we'll need to be conscious of, and it'll certainly relate back to the CBA. So where we are now is we have a basic framework of what we're going towards, and that includes establishing a specific committee that will drive this thing. And so we have an idea of the types of representatives that we would like on that committee, but we are starting to identify who we would reach out to, how it would be structured, the timeline for all of this. Currently what we're thinking is starting that process and launching that committee early next year. And it's going to be a long process, certainly, to develop something like this. A lot of negotiations, a lot of compromise, and kind of letting the best ideas rise to the top, and determining what's feasible. So lots to come. This was just a quick and dirty overview, and I'm happy to take questions.
Questions, comments for Jake? Thank you for that presentation, Jake. I see Robin. Robin? If You're muted, Robin. I think you're muted. Yep, you're muted, Robin.
Sorry.
No problem.
Will there be any CAG members on that committee?
Yes, thank you. I should have mentioned that. We will have CAG and EAG representation on that committee.
Thank you.
I see Darcy.
Will it only be CAG and EAG members on the committee, or are you interested or looking for recommendations for other people that we might think would be able to contribute?
Absolutely. Yeah. Not just CAG and EAG, variety of stakeholders across, workforce, housing, disability rights, those types of groups. So yes, and we will come to this group when we're with a specific ask, but also certainly you can send us your ideas and contacts that you think would be great.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake.
Jake, maybe real quickly, Jake, maybe you could put your contact information in. Well, I guess we don't have a chat box. If you do have suggestions, just let Jason know and he can get them to us. Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say another idea in that we will have a lot of interest for folks who want to sit on this community benefits subcommittee is to have some folks serve as subject matter experts to help inform the committee. They may not be on it, but they will have the ability to come and talk to the committee about their specific areas of concern.
Other thoughts, comments, questions? I'll just note that as part of the team's work on the CBA, we have conducted a pretty thorough, as Jake indicated, national assessment. And near as we can tell, it's not really been done in this fashion on a mega project. So this is a real exciting element for the program. And we would love your good thoughts and recommendations as we kind of move forward to ensure that we really are operationalizing the stated community and equity goals.
Also, one quick note too is we often see in these agreements that the community comes to a project and what they end up advocating for and sometimes is basic things like bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure improvements, whereas in this program those are already part of the core project. And so we feel like we've got a good head start, and there's certainly a lot of community benefits that are going to come from this project overall, but we want to do as much as possible.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jake. And Jake will be back as we progress forward and as we get closer to things. If we can get the next slides up, we'll start to wrap up here. Next slide, please. Just a foreshadow of sort of what's next in terms of program meetings. We have Equity Advisory Group meeting on November 21st, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Our next Community Advisory Group meeting will be on December 8th, 4 to 6 p.m. And then, of course, we have the Bi-State Legislative Committee on December 12th, 9 a.m. to noon. And then we'll have an Executive Steering Group meeting on December 16th, 10 a.m. To noon. And of course, like all of our meetings, you can find these on the program's website and tune in there as well as on the YouTube channel. Next slide, please. Just in terms of future CAG meeting topics, Jason, you want to just review these real quickly for folks?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put up the top. We did, after our September meeting, sent out a survey to you, the CAG specifically. If you haven't taken that, please, I will send out the link again. Please do. We'd love to hear from everybody. And so we will analyze and report back on the survey results, talking about your desires in engaging the community and yourself. We're doing a lot of work internally to really make sure that 2023 we bring to you guys a robust slate of topics to discuss and weigh in on. So we'll talk to you about the purpose, role, and schedule, and certainly a pat on the back to everybody as we come up on 2 years of the Community Advisory Group being formed. kind of rolling into all the purpose, role, and schedule. Like I said, we'll bring kind of a work plan of what we're thinking 2023 will look like for CAG. As Jake just mentioned, the CBA committee will start to get formed around the beginning of 2023. So we'll be back to talk about the community benefits agreement. As Greg mentioned at the top of the meeting, the program is currently going through an IBR cost estimate exercise and funding plan update. So we'll be able to bring that to you either, if not in December, but early 2023. And you guys have heard these words before, but we're certainly going to get deeper into program design elements and aesthetics. The design team has expressed interest in hearing from you. And then we're going to gear up for another strong round of engaging not just this advisory group, but the community at large. And so we'll hear from our community engagement team on the approach and implementation of that effort. So those are all that's not comprehensive. That's a snapshot of the high level topics. We're certainly discussing and putting more into our work plan, but that's what's coming up in the next few months.
Thank you, Jason. Next slide, please. So now we'll take a public comment. Brett, do we have anyone sign up for public comment?
We do have someone signed up for public comment.
Okay.
And the last four is 6422, and hopefully they don't have YouTube running in the background and they're just listening on their phone. They'll get a prompt to unmute.
Okay, why don't I go ahead and review the public comment slide again? I believe we have that next. Okay, so comment instructions to make a verbal comment. Verbal public comment will be welcome in the Zoom webinar during the designated time with the option to turn on your web camera. Please use the link located in the meeting description on the YouTube meeting page or on the IBR CAG meeting webpage. Commenters will not be allowed to share their screen and will be removed from the room once the public comment period concludes. To comment by phone, please dial 1-669-900-6833 or 1-408-638-0968. Enter meeting ID 993-5459-6043. Passcode is 674942. Please dial *9 to raise your hand. After you are invited to speak, dial *6 to unmute yourself. We'll roughly have about 10 minutes and we will cap you at about 2 minutes. If we run out of time and you have not had a chance to speak, you can still provide comments after the meeting. With that, why don't we receive our first public commenter? Brett, I'm assuming you're going to put up the clock or let us know when the time is. Okay, there you go. He's always ready to go. Okay, please go ahead and address the CAG.
Yeah.
Okay, your time starts now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, this is David Rowe. I'm a commuter from Battleground to Lake Oswego. All the discussion tonight was they didn't mention the Coast Guard rejection of the height. And I'm asking all the members here, have they ever went down to OMSI and looked up at the height of the Markham Bridge on Portland waterfront? That would be the view of the IBR Bridge from Vancouver waterfront or Hayden Island. The IBR design is basically the same design that was rejected over 10 years ago. The Coast Guard has stated the low river clearance is not acceptable. The bicycle citizens and wheelchair users are concerned about the steep ramp on the Vancouver side close to the waterfront. ETRAN is concerned with the elevated max station in Vancouver, and the Hayden Island residents have objected to the local preferred alternative. So I think we need to get back and redesign this. The tall bridge was planned to avoid the drawbridge and the stoplight on I-5, but that it shouldn't be a problem if they'd remove the bridge opening on the Santa Fe Railroad Bridge, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and a shorter bridge with an opening like the I-95 lift bridge in Washington, D.C. would be more aesthetic and seismic resilient than a tall bridge. So I think we need to just look at a different design with a lift or a tunnel. It's just better than this high bridge that was proposed 10 years ago that was rejected by the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you for your comment. Brett, do we have anyone else signed up?
We do not have anyone else signed up.
Okay, great. Greg, any last comments before we wrap up here?
So just want to thank everybody for participating. Going through the design details on screen is a tough process. And so thanks everybody for your questions and your patience as we walk through this. We will continue to look at our footprint and impacts and continue to try and convey those to this group in an understandable way. So once again, this is step one in a lengthy process to understand impacts and design elements. So just want to thank everybody. We have some great information coming up in future meetings as was pointed out. So we're looking forward to continuing the great conversation with the community advisory group. So thank you.
Great. With that, thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. We will see you next month.
Happy Veterans Day, everybody.
Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day.
We'll see you all soon. Thanks. Take care.